Welcome back to the Torque Test channel. More affordable brands and tools are getting better every year, but as they get better, so too often at the same time does the brand they're trying to target, unfortunately for them. You make a stubby 12-volt impact, try to take some of this guy's lunch money, and Milwaukee comes out with high output batteries and makes all their tools a little bit more peppy. You make a Gen 2 to try to compete with that, and Milwaukee makes their own Gen 2 and moves those goalposts a mile down the road, and so on and so forth. So what if a lawless YouTube channel not beholden to the boardroom meetings and safety guidelines of big corporations put together a ragtag crew of modded, currently on the market, lower cost tools and battery packs to try to leapfrog this tit-for-tat tradition and see what kind of sauce we can squeeze out of them just for fun. I mean, to learn stuff together scientifically about how these tools work, what their limitations are, and just to push them, see how far they can go. This is a custom reworked Hercules die grinder we have thanks to Nick, a viewer we went back and forth with on his plans to turn the screws to it. This is Harbor Freight Hercules' first one-handed sort of automotive die grinder, which came out recently when Milwaukee's Gen 2 also did, which is probably pretty unfortunate timing for them, but either way, it's $60, so we find not a terrible buy, if maybe a little bit underpowered compared to air die grinders. But in order to power it, and this 4 amp hour Hercules pack being their biggest and baddest, while Nick worked on that, we and our Skunkworks team of tinkerers got busy working on something that might be able to feed it. So this Hercules 4 amp hour is not actually a 4 amp hour pack. We scrapped the 2000 milliamp hour cells inside and swapped in their place small cell P30B cells. We're going to be going from around 20 amps peak discharge per cell to some of the industry leading 18650s out there at the moment, both higher capacity at 3000 milliamp hours and 30 amps per cell, taking this from a 4 to 6 amp hour and 1.5 timesing its spiciness. Now, there was another brand up and coming on the affordable brushless scene, though, that we wanted to take a look at, and that's Hypertough. Their recent brushless, mostly all black stuff made by Shervon are, for the most part, standouts, but their 12-volt tools, while still very affordable, do sometimes maybe not get all the way there. Last time out, I mentioned wishing they had a high output battery, not just a simple 6 amp hour addition with more boring cells inside, but something really punchy. And you guys mentioned wanting to see their latest 6 amp hour that they offer nonetheless, so we did that. But we also will do you one better. We had ordered enough P30B cells to swap another 6 amp hour pack in with these, and that's the difference you're seeing here, both 6 amp hours, but no name 3000 milliamp hour cells versus mall cell P30Bs, 6 total, 3 in the post up here, and then 3 in the base, with our often preferred sandwiched copper nickel strips to minimize resistance and prevent these things from melting where it matters. So let's take a look at what we've been able to change simply by building new battery packs. With both the Hercules and Hypertough got around, or in some cases a little bit better performance than the $200 Milwaukee Gen 1, but as you can see on screen here, still far off from their new $220 Gen 2 die grinder. We'll start with speed under load here. The OEM Hercules with its new internals swapped battery under the same load is going to see a pretty big gain in disk speed when in use here, 17,560 RPM, up from 16.2K. The main downside of the Hypertough compared to these others in the stats from what we've recorded is running speed. It only put up 13,800 last time. With the available from Walmart 6 amp hour pack, you're going to see a noticeable increase to 14,850. Nice. Even our custom pack we have on hand here with those P30B cells inside isn't going to improve all that much on that, 14,880. Mostly though, what we want to see is how much it's going to take to stall these tools out now. That's what's going to make it compare closest to the M12 if increased. The stock Hercules with our new brick hanging off the end of it, it's going to make it up to, once taxed until it can't take it any longer, 210 watts up from 190. And sustained watts, how much you can keep it there for some length without it falling off a cliff, that's increased from 170 to 185 watts. Not earth-shattering. Rebuilding one of these 12-volt packs for the extra sauce on a stock unit is probably not worth your time so far. When you can just walk into a Walmart, pay less total, and get, we find, the same exact performance with a tool and battery right out of the box, a Hypertough 6 amp hour pack brings things up 10 watts from 200 to 210 to match that last run. And even from 170 sustained up to 190 sustain now, a nice little upgrade. One you'll find again basically matching when using our own pack, that increase. Once more bumping things up 10 more watts in each category, peak up to 220 and sustained up to 200. Figured the battery would be more of a bottleneck than it is, so are the batteries just not all that much better, or is something else going on? What we've been going up against is M12 and their 5 amp hour battery, and that drops in a voltage drop test, basically the pack under a decent 12 volt load, but nothing too insane, to 10.6 volts after 10 seconds of use, like trigger time. This is the 4 amp hour Hyper Tough pack you'll get with many 12 volt Hyper Tough tools now, and it drops a lot more. We've never ran this test before, but sort of assumed it would. Based on the performance we've seen, it's going to see 9.9 volts under load. The only 12 volt packs we've seen do that poorly are knockoff no-name ones. The 6 amp hour Hyper Tough, it may be an extra $45 or so. It was $38 when we bought the last one, so they've gone up. And that's similar in price to the die grinder and stubby impact wrench kits that you can buy, but it is better than I would have given it credit for. We're seeing 10.5 volts. That's really decent. I think if we maxed out these packs and what they could deliver, we'd see more of a gap, but this is still very good. Just not as good as you can cook up on a workbench, apparently, as the Molcell P30B creations aren't playing around either. We're seeing very little drop out of this guy. This is going to see as low as just 11.06 volts by the 10-second mark. Nice. The Hercules, unsurprisingly, using the same doubled up copper nickel strips, same cells, is going to do roughly the same, which is to say, very good. So it's not the battery pack's fault per se. They're doing very good. This is spicy stuff. The tools just don't seem to have a diet for it yet. So let's try to see if we can switch that up in the form of A, maybe trying a different tool in the Hyper Tough Stubby Impacts case, and B, a custom modded tool designed to just let it eat. This is Hyper Tough's also Gen 2 Stubby 12 volt impact wrench. This would be our third time buying one of these, including the Gen 1, because folks keep telling us how good these are, and well, they haven't really put up the numbers quite yet. With the battery it came with before, it couldn't complete a dyno run. With the battery it comes in now in the Gen 2, the 4 amp hour, they do complete a dyno run, but it doesn't sound super happy doing so. Like it's got off and on surging sort of it's dealing with inside. This tool also doesn't have the most refined trigger. The socket fitment can be a little loose compared to others, but it is under $55 as a kit, so you can't really be all that upset with it. Perhaps the 6 amp hour pack is the key to unlocking this thing's potential, and heck, if it doesn't work, surely this abomination will. Let's find out. Nice, that is not bad. It seemed to feel quite a bit happier during this run and added to its peak numbers showing that, especially if you have some of their other stuff, this is probably a worthwhile $45 purchase. We're going to complete the rest of the tests for this one today, tally up its score and show it on the ranking, including the price difference with the battery, showing it both ways, so if you have our rankings, you can check that out shortly. Let's see how it looks with what the TTC Skunkworks crew has cooked up instead. So some increase, but not record-setting for something in this class, even this size, even before Milwaukee's latest 500 foot-pound model came out. It seems to be more of a tool design, board programming, and hardware limitation than simply how much you have in the tank that it can draw from, which is a good thing we have for you today, just that. Let's check out something that you can't buy, and until today hasn't existed, a one-hander cordless die grinder from Harbor Freight for 60-ish bucks, maybe a couple extra dollars in materials, that will really swing for the fences. Inside of this Hercules die grinder, you're going to find a few differences from a stock one. Our viewer Nick noticed next to these 6 FETs, or field effect transistors, was what might be a shunt resistor. And after scraping off the coating, he confirmed it was a 1 milliohm shunt. Then doing some baseline testing with this tool to compare to, and reaching out to us as well, he went ahead and soldered a comparably large 16 gauge copper wire over the top of that shunt resistor. This will fool the tool via a much lower resistance into thinking things are all gravy and calm when in fact it's wide open and cooking, to keep those amps freely flowing and not taper them with increasing resistance and temperatures. And yeah, that seemed to do the trick, so much so that it let the smoke out in short order during load testing again. Well, it was no smoke, but it did stop working. And here's the cliff notes on what happened next. Track down this fried FET that was off on its own out here that appeared to interrupt the power from the battery going to the motor after the trigger switch. The solder on this just went to liquid during its use and was no longer connected. So a simple short to bypass this from the drain to source pins and a wire from that to the bypass shunt to fully convince the tool to sort of fly blind here, and it was up and running again. Long story short, Hercules, Harbor Freight, the factory using parts like this with low voltage that when mixed with the amps involved in the needs of this tool creates a lot of heat, maybe a lot of unnecessary heat compared to some other components they could have chosen, which likely contributes to the tool shutting off sooner regardless of what the motor can ultimately achieve. So one last mod on this guy was a small fan attached to the board's heatsink with thermal paste. This is a 12 volt 25 by 7 millimeter fan that required minimal trimming on the case to fit, with a new thermal switch to turn it on when things are hot and turn it off when it's cool so it doesn't drain your battery. So here we have the shunt modded bottleneck bypass thermostatic actively cooled Hercules die grinder with aftermarket cell modded Hercules battery pack. Dang, let's see what she can do. The Blue Frankenstein's monster here is able to increase its baseline score of 190 watts and 210 with our new battery to 290 watts. 300 watts instantly makes it fall on its face each time, but it can hover around the mid 200s for a long time and peak up to 290. Nice. And the reason it's able to chill out at those elevated levels is thanks to its active cooling. Even after you put the tool down, you can hear it blowing away, cooling that board down. Milwaukee's die grinder, for example, would be cool if they did something similar. Their Gen 1 was famous for taking breaks due to high heat. To show you the effect of all that, we have a pair of thermocouples that can show you those temperatures in real time, routed out the bottom of the tool so that we can display it here on screen for you, one on the motor and one on the board near where that heat's coming from, all stuck down with thermal paste and tape to try to give you guys some live data. At close to ambient temps with any real sort of use, you can start to see those centigrade values climb. But once you start to really tax the tool is when you're going to see things really spike up quickly and the board shoots up faster than the motor can in temp, and this sort of thing doesn't help trying to get the most out of the tool. But during lower usage amounts or when idle, the active cooling now installed on the board causes the board temps to drop at a much faster rate. There's less mass there to cool and a heat sink as well, so that obviously helps too. But once the fan is switched on due to temperatures and on full time, it does allow us to sustain 220, 230, 240 watts for quite some time without shutting off, and that's a pretty massive increase. So are we able to unseat the Milwaukee? It appears not, but not even having to make a new tool to get close for like $65 all in versus $220. It's pretty cool, I think, and makes you wonder what would be possible if we did similar things on bigger tools. Big thanks to Nick for the idea to mod this tool and for all the info he found, and to Skylar and our Skunkworks team to get these packs built as quick as we did. We make episodes like this every Friday, so big thanks to you as well for watching to make that possible.